I'm Richard Epstein, and my father went to dental school out in Oregon with a bunch of people who grew up in Brooklyn. It was a very strange phenomenon. All these New Yorkers who ended up out there during just after the war and came back to Connecticut and all settled here. But unlike a lot of his colleagues, my father just didn't want to be just a dentist. He wanted a dental empire. And not only that, he figured all of us in the family would be part of it. So when I was a kid, he would come home and he'd reach into his pocket and he'd toss a wad of money on the table for my brother and I and say, "Here, count it, count it." And of course, it was expected that we would join him in practice. That was the master plan he had. So, you know, I'm basically, down deep, I'm a musician. I've always played music. I always loved it. And so I was living this sort of dual existence. I was going through the motions of going to school and majoring in something that would allow me to go to dental school, but I was still pretty conflicted. But one night, a little before I had to really make up my mind in college, here I found myself sitting in the living room of the chairman of the music department at Brown University where I was, and I spent a lot of time in the music department there. And we were listening to the most amazing system you'd ever heard with these enormous speakers. He was, a really well-known composer, and he knew my predicament. And he turned to me and said, "Richard, the only reason I can really do this is I married a really rich woman." So that clinched it for me. I said, okay, I got it. So I went to dental school. I became a dentist. What else could I do, you know? And after that, I got this inkling that, okay, this is cool, but wouldn't it be nice to do some international care, like the Good Ship Hope or, the Doctors Without Borders? And I found this wonderful position on a little bus. It was a Greyhound, or like a school bus, that had been converted into a dental clinic with 3 chairs, and it was parked on a camp for underprivileged children in Greece. And I lived in Athens and was teaching students from the dental school and having a grand time. And at the end of this program, the head of the program came to me, who was running clinics in Greece and Turkey and Israel and all over the place, and said, "Richard, I want you to be one of my lieutenants. I like the way you run this thing." He said, "The only thing is, you have to go back to school. You need more credentials." And I thought to myself, oh man, I just got through 20th grade, It's a whole lot. He said, "I'll get you in anywhere. You want a master's, you want a doctorate, you want a specialty degree, you just let me know." At the same time, my father was calling me, or writing me those days. We didn't have the emails from America saying, "Oh, now you're a dentist's son. You're going to come back and work with me. It's wonderful." Well, I took that hook, line, and sinker, and I moved back here and did go into practice with him, where I expected to be number 2. Well, by that time, the empire consisted of 2 offices, and I found myself way down at number whatever it is, I don't know. I was real low man on the totem pole, and I was working in his office, and I was working in the welfare office that he had established as a second part of his empire. And it wasn't quite the Shangri-La that I had imagined, but I stuck with it. And then he opened another office. He had one of the very first offices in a shopping center in the country. And he was feeling really good about himself, but I wasn't feeling quite the same about myself, because it just wasn't quite what he had, made it out to be. My brother bought the hook, line, and sinker thing too. He became a dentist. He went off to Europe took a year off, just gallivanting around, whatever he wanted to do. And by this time, my father had figured out, well, maybe I have it wrong. What I have to do is get Richard an office of his own in an environment that he'll like. So we started looking around for something in Westport or Wilton or Weston and found this beautiful old house. My father was always buying equipment and practices and leftovers from dentists who retired or died, or widows of dentists who died and retired. And he found an ad for some dental equipment in this beautiful historic house in Weston. And instead of buying the equipment, he bought the equipment and the house with it and set me up there. So, I said, okay, this is an interesting start. The only problem was the zoning there meant that not only did you have to practice there, but whoever was there also had to live in the house. And it was a great house, 7 fireplaces, 2 brick ovens, historic and all. But I had a girlfriend at the time. And I was living with a girlfriend, and I said, that's great, Dad. I'm just going to move into the house, but I'm bringing my girlfriend with me. Well, it wasn't a girlfriend my parents liked. She had 3 kids, and they didn't cotton to the whole relationship. So he was stuck. I moved in anyway and started working there. And my father would traipse in. He'd come into the office as the boss, and then he'd come into the house as the landlord. It got more and more difficult. And at that time, my brother thought, well, maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'll join this group, and yet another piece of the empire will fall in place. So he came back, and my father had bought a little property, and my brother decided, this is it. I'm putting up a dental palace here, which he persuaded my father to do. By this time, I was really hooked on my girlfriend. I decided to get married in the backyard of this historic house. And so we did this, and my brother shows up like he's supposed to be the best man. 20 minutes just before the ceremony, he comes in. And, we got married, but it just wasn't going to happen. I mean, I knew in my heart that I was not made for this dental empire stuff. It was tough. So I decided to move out. I told my father that. And my father said, well, okay, and I said, well, look, I've got this nice practice. I just started here. I've got this house. How about selling it to me? So I said, sure. So he gave me a number that he knew I couldn't afford and wouldn't take a mortgage from it. And so I decided to strike out on my own. But what really happened, the day, the defining moment of what made me decide this was sitting across from him at his desk in his first office and telling him, look, it's not working out. And he said, son, you can have anything that I want to give you. And I said, wait a minute, let me hear that again. He said, sure, that's what I meant. You can have anything I want to give you. And then I realized that that's what the whole dream was about on his side. And I've never looked back. I started my own practice. I'm happy. And my girlfriend over there is pretty happy too. So thank you.